Rory McIlroy just said something before this Open Championship that even his closest friends didn't expect to hear. If you've ever wondered what's really going on inside the mind of one of the greatest golfers alive right now, this is the video where he finally lets his guard down. Stay with me, because by the end of this, you'll understand why people are calling this the most honest press conference of his entire career. Before we go further, if you love raw, unfiltered sports moments like this, hit that subscribe button right now. It genuinely means a lot, because channels like this one only survive because people like you choose to stick around. So if this story moves you even a little bit, subscribing is the easiest way to say, keep making these. Alright, let's get into it. It's Open Championship week. Royal Birkdale. The rain is threatening, the wind is picking up off the Irish Sea, and every single camera in that media room is pointed at one man. Rory McIlroy walks in, sits down, adjusts the microphone, and within minutes, a reporter asks him a question that nobody expected to land so deep. The question was simple on the surface. How does he want to be remembered 100 years from now? But the answer he gave wasn't simple at all. It was blunt. It was almost uncomfortable. And it revealed something about this man that years of trophies and highlight reels never could. Before I tell you exactly what he said, let's rewind, because to understand why this moment matters so much, you need to understand where Rory McIlroy is standing in his career right now, in this exact chapter of his story. This is a golfer who has spent nearly 2 decades chasing something that has slipped through his fingers more times than anyone can count. Major championships. Not just winning one, winning enough of them to be mentioned in the same breath as the true legends of the game. And for years, one tournament in particular haunted him. The Masters. He had won every other major early in his career, but Augusta kept saying no. Green jacket after green jacket went to someone else while Rory watched from the leaderboard, close but never quite close enough. That drought became one of the most talked about storylines in modern golf. Commentators built entire careers around debating whether he would ever complete the career Grand Slam. Then, just over a year ago, it finally happened. Rory McIlroy won the Masters. He completed the Grand Slam. Grown men cried. He himself broke down in tears on that green. It was one of those sports moments that transcends the sport itself, the kind of moment that even people who don't follow golf found themselves talking about the next morning. And then, almost unbelievably, this year he did it again. He defended his green jacket at Augusta, becoming only the 4th man in the history of the tournament to win back-to-back, joining names like Jack Nicklaus, Nick Faldo, and Tiger Woods. Think about that for a second. Not just winning twice in a row, in an era stacked with generational talent, with younger players hungry to take his throne. That victory pushed his major total to 6. 6 major championships. That ties him with Phil Mickelson among active players. It places him in a tie for 12th on the all-time list, alongside legends like Faldo, Mickelson, and Lee Trevino. And here's the number that really matters to him, the number that's been quietly sitting in the back of his mind for years. He now trails only one European golfer in history when it comes to major wins. Harry Vardon. Vardon won 7 majors, more than a century ago. Rory is one behind him. 1 major away from standing alone as the most decorated European golfer to ever play the game. So when he walked into that Royal Birkdale press room this week, the pressure wasn't invisible. Everyone in that room knew what was on the line. This wasn't just another tournament. This was the Open Championship, the oldest major in golf, played in the country where the sport was born, and for Rory, a tournament that carries deep personal weight. His only Open win came back in 2014, at Royal Liverpool, on a green, damp course, a different version of himself, a different chapter of his career entirely. Since then, he's come agonizingly close multiple times, but the Claret jug has eluded him. Now here he was, arriving at Birkdale as one of the favorites, chasing not just the 2nd Open title, but that 7th major that would put him level with one of the most historic figures the sport has ever known. And that's the moment the reporter asked him about legacy. About how he wants to be remembered 100 years from now. Everyone expected the usual answer. The polished, media-trained answer about wanting to inspire the next generation, about wanting his name etched into history, about wanting people to look back and say he was one of the greats. Instead, Rory McIlroy gave an answer that stunned the room into silence for a moment. He basically said he doesn't care. Not in a cold way, not in a dismissive way, but in a way that felt almost strangely peaceful. He explained that the only opinions that actually matter to him are the ones held by the people who love him, the people close to him, right now, while he's alive to feel it. Because 100 years from now, he said, he'll be long gone. He won't be around to hear what people say about him. He'll be, in his own words, 6 feet under. He even joked, half seriously, that he doesn't think he'll be coming back as a ghost to read the headlines. It was funny. People in that room actually laughed. But underneath the humor was something heavier, something that made a lot of golf fans stop scrolling and actually sit with what he'd said. Here is a man who has spent his entire adult life being measured, ranked, compared, and dissected by millions of people, and in this one unscripted moment, he basically told the world that none of that ultimately matters to him. What matters is the people standing next to him right now. What matters is how the people who actually know him, not the ones who only know his swing on television, remember him. This wasn't the first time Rory has hinted at this kind of introspection either. Golf fans who have followed his career closely know that over the past couple of years, he's talked more openly about the personal side of his journey, about rough patches away from the course that occasionally spilled into his form on it, without ever pointing fingers at any single cause. He's never been the type to dramatize his personal life in public, but there's been a noticeable shift in how honestly he talks about the mental and emotional weight of being one of the most scrutinized athletes on the planet. And through all of it, his public standing has remained remarkably intact. Fans still show up for him. Sponsors still back him. And most importantly, his game, even through dips and droughts, has stayed at an elite level. Now here's where the story gets even more interesting, because legacy wasn't the only thing Rory opened up about at Birkdale. In that same press conference, he pivoted into a completely different conversation, one that's been quietly simmering in the golf world for months. The structure of the major championship season itself. If you're not deep into golf, here's the quick version. The 4 men's majors are played in a tight window, starting with the Masters in April, moving to the PGA Championship, then the US Open, and finally the Open Championship in July. That's 4 of the biggest tournaments in the sport, all crammed into roughly 3 months, and then almost 9 full months of waiting before the cycle starts again. Rory used his platform in that room to say what a lot of players think privately, but rarely say publicly. He said he sees both sides of it. From a purely competitive standpoint, when a player is on a hot streak, it's actually a good thing for the majors to come back to back, because momentum carries over. But from the perspective of the sport as a whole, from the perspective of growing interest and keeping fans engaged throughout the entire year, he believes the major season being spread out a little more would benefit golf itself. He was careful, almost diplomatic, in how he framed it, acknowledging that there are a lot of different governing bodies and a lot of competing opinions involved, and that his voice alone probably won't change the calendar. But he said he'd certainly keep voicing it anyway. That single moment tells you a lot about where Rory McIlroy is in his career right now. He's not just a player chasing trophies anymore. He's become one of the most influential voices in the entire sport, someone whose opinions on scheduling, on tour structure, on the direction of professional golf, actually carry weight in boardrooms, not just locker rooms. And that leads us into another major storyline that's been following him for weeks now, one that adds even more context to everything he said at Birkdale. Just before the Open, at his pre-tournament press conference for the US Open back at Shinnecock Hills, Rory didn't hold back when reporters asked him about proposed changes to how the PGA Tour schedule could look starting in 2028. There have been reports of a potential 2-track system being discussed behind closed doors, one tier of roughly 23 elevated events including the majors and playoffs with massive fields, and a second, lower tier of tournaments that would essentially become secondary events, almost like a feeder tour. Rory didn't sugarcoat his opinion on this either. He specifically brought up the Canadian Open, a tournament he's won twice and clearly has a personal connection to, and said he didn't think it deserved to be pushed down into that lower tier just because of sponsorship dollars. He put it bluntly, saying that certain events risk losing their stature simply because a sponsor isn't able to put up the kind of money the new structure would require. It was a rare moment of a top player publicly pushing back on the direction his own tour might be heading, and it resonated with a lot of fans and fellow players who feel like the soul of certain historic tournaments is being slowly traded away for bigger paydays. He went even further, reflecting on how the entire competitive landscape of professional golf changed once a rival league entered the picture with massive guaranteed contracts and no-cut format events. Rory admitted that, looking back now, the structure the PGA Tour had before all of that disruption was actually pretty solid. He said the changes that followed, the inflated prize funds, the reduced field sizes, all of it, created what he called a false economy, something that had to happen at the time to keep top talent from leaving, but which now, with that outside threat fading, might not have been necessary at all. It's a rare moment of a superstar admitting that the chaos of the last few years may have been an overcorrection. Now stick with me, because this next part of the story is where things get personal again, And it circles right back to why this Open Championship means so much more to Rory than just another shot at a trophy. After completing the back-to-back Masters wins, you'd expect a player to be riding an unstoppable wave of confidence into every tournament that followed. But golf rarely works that way, and Rory's results since that historic moment at Augusta have actually been a mixed bag. A 19th place finish. A 7th. A 12th. A rough 32nd. Another 7th. Solid results by most standards, sure, but not the dominant, world-beating form that fans were hoping to see from a man who had just etched his name into history books. He even skipped a signature PGA Tour event, the Travelers' Championship, taking a break that actually put some of his tour membership status and exemptions at risk, since players are required to hit a minimum number of events per season. It was a bold, almost defiant decision, prioritizing his own preparation and mental reset over ticking a box on a schedule. And how did he spend that break? Not sitting at home. He went straight to the coast, to traditional links golf courses in the UK, spending days hitting shots off real links turf, battling genuine coastal wind, reconnecting with the exact kind of golf that Open Championships demand. He spent time down in Cornwall with fellow tour players, some of the biggest names in the game, just playing for fun, rediscovering instincts that modern target-style American golf courses don't really require. That preparation clearly mattered to him. Because links golf isn't like anything else in the sport. It's unpredictable, brutal, shaped by weather that can change in a single hour. Success there requires a completely different mindset than winning at Augusta or a US Open. And Rory, who has only tasted Open Championship victory once in his entire career, back in 2014, knows exactly how difficult it is to conquer this specific tournament. There's also a beautifully symbolic layer to this year's Open that connects to something from Rory's childhood. Ahead of this tournament, he crossed paths with Nick Faldo, one of the greatest players in Open Championship history, someone Rory actually has a personal history with dating back to when he was just a teenager competing in junior golf events. Faldo reportedly offered him advice on how to navigate the challenges of Royal Birkdale specifically, a course with its own unique demands. And it turns out Rory's very first Open Championship appearance as a professional actually came at that exact venue years ago. There's something almost poetic about that, a young Rory McIlroy walking those fairways for the first time, and now, years later, walking back onto that same ground as a six-time major champion with a legitimate shot at tying one of the greatest records in European golf history. Now let's talk about the field around him, because this Open isn't just about Rory chasing history in isolation. The world number 2 arrives at Birkdale among the tournament favorites, but he's not alone at the top.